Welcome. This is the podcast dedicated to living a revenue culture. And a revenue culture is that point in a business where it's maximizing its profits because it's optimizing its people first culture. And so today we have Candice Frazer with us. Candice is the Senior Vice President of Operations at TTI. And in her career at TTI, she's been a VP of marketing. She's been a global consultant. And before that, she was in an agency, very successful agency career. And she was part of one of the big players, Verizon, and had a number of opportunities there, managing corporate communications, chief of staff for Redbox of Verizon. Actually, I've never talked to her about that. That sounds like it would be fun. And I've had the chance to work with her at TTI, and she just completed her certification in Chief Revenue Officer thinking. So Candice, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited because, I know you as somebody who, I told you when you went through certification, I don't think I've ever had anybody who sees the big picture better than you do, but you also see all the little pieces. And you can not only see them, but you know how to put them together, and you can lead a team to put them together. Or if you have to, you can put them together yourself. And, that's a kind of a rare combination. So thank you for being here today. This is great. So tell me, through all those things, what were the important things in your career or in your life that really got you here? And what's the purpose? Because I see all your energy and I see how excited you get about your work. So there must be some purpose behind that to have that kind of commitment.
Well, absolutely. And thank you for asking. I feel incredibly flattered, and I'm blushing here a little bit as you're saying I'm able to see the big picture and implement the small steps to get those things done. I'll start with your first question, which was what about my background and my history has formed me as an individual and an executive in an organization. And, I began my career, as you mentioned, at Verizon. And I was actually an absence intern at a garage covering the New York region. So I helped those guys that climb the telephone poles and that dive into deep into the manholes. It was a great place to start as a 20-nothing-year-old and get some experience there. And one of the things that was most compelling to me and that I learned at that moment in time is I was actually a legacy. So my father worked for Verizon as well. And essentially he introduced me to the right people to be able to get that internship. So I actually have a very, very soft spot in my heart for legacies, because legacies sometimes get a really bad rap, right? Like you're just here because your father, you're just here because your mother, because of your aunt. And I made it a point to break out of the I'm only here because. So I tried to do work differently. I tried to do work that added value. And in particular, as I was in this garage, so literally like these telephone trucks pulling through the middle of the garage, one of my responsibilities was to update the bulletin board that had information for our technicians. And I was updating the bulletin board, taking a tremendous amount of pride in my bulletin board, but I noticed that the techs weren't really kind of paying attention to it in the way that I wanted to, not really having a conversation about it. So again, to break out of the I am a legacy, like I'm only here because of my father, I actually turned all of the content in the board upside down. So I left all of it, like all of the words, all of the pictures, everything was upside down. I was updating this every week or every other week. And I put everything upside down just to see if it would drum up a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
So, over the course of this week, a few techs were like popping their head into the office and saying, Candice, I see that you turned it upside down. Like we're reading it, believe it or not. So I got some validation from that, but little did I know that the vice president of the region was going to be walking through our garage as she saw all of my content upside down. And she asked about it. And so, the second liner at that time came and introduced her to me and me to her. And And we struck up a conversation. I actually ended up being invited to be on her staff. So I went from this intern in a garage turning content upside down just to try and get the eyeballs of these techs and break out of the legacy shell. And then I got invited to be on a VP staff. And she's still a tremendous mentor in my life completely.
Wow.
So one of my favorite stories, and one of the things that really define me as an individual, doing things well with tremendous amount of value, but also doing things different, taking some risks and being okay with them in a really compelling way. So that was an example of one story and something that shaped my life. I also then, at the time I was working in New York, but I decided to, try out, again, taking some really great calculated risks. I actually moved up to Boston to do some more work for this VP. I then moved out to Chicago, again, for work and for an opportunity, and then moved out to Phoenix to be closer to family. So again, like pursuing the opportunities and moving cross country quite a few times. I'm still indebted to my husband, who's incredibly patient with me and very, very kind. As I was saying, let's go do these things. Let's go try them and put ourselves out there. But perhaps the most significant event in my life was open heart surgery. So I am a heart warrior. And when I had my first child, we discovered that I had a congenital heart defect. So 13 months after my baby was born, I had open heart surgery. Luckily, I am a one and done type of person. There are a lot of heart patients that are not as lucky as I am. But I am one and done. But that really transformed my life and the way that I approach life, to not get me too upset about the things that are not life threatening, right? So like if nobody's dying, we're okay, right? So I promised myself that I would never waste another breath, and I would always try to keep myself as level as I possibly could in moments when people were becoming escalated. But sometime after that, I was also able to define my personal purpose statement, which again fuels me and provides a lot of almost like a metaphysical guidance for myself, where I exist to help people believe in themselves. So in every bit of work that I do, I'm there for the person and for their transformation. So those are the three kind of big hits in my life here, Rick, that kind of define my career and my personal approach to the way that I work.
Wow. And I can see how, having now worked with you for going on 2 years, I can see that in the work you do. I can see the calm you have when other people are kind of going nuts. And that maybe that's where your vision about these things come from, because you're not distorted by those things that really don't matter.
That's right. That's completely right. You and I, as we were going through the CRO certification, which I love, gave me so many tools in my tool belt that I'm able to now use in business. But you actually said to me, you're like, yeah, you're really calm in the morning. Is it because the kids are at school or because like everything else is sorted at home? And I really appreciated the compliment. But it's because I get happy. And I like to be on the happy side, but when things get a little shaky, it's just about leveling it for the team. I think as a leader and as an individual, it's just my approach.
Yeah, and we've had lots and lots of conversations, but two of the stories you told, I have to admit, I have parallel stories. I was actually a legacy at Ameritech, which was Verizon's sister organization, because my uncle was senior vice president, and he was the one who actually was in Washington negotiating the breaking up of the bells.
Whoa,
so,
the Ma Bell system.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
And so when I went to work there, every conversation was about Uncle Ray, because everybody knew who my uncle was. And I thought, I was in my 30s at that point. And it was a weird experience. So I can appreciate, you're turning the thing upside down, because if you don't do something, people don't see you, they see the legacy piece. So that very, particularly when you talk about culture, I can imagine how people could come in the legacy situation, and the whole environment kind of puts them in a shell and keeps them there.
That's right.
And so the other one is, you're talking about the open heart surgery, which we had talked about before, but your response to it, I was a number of years ago, I'll make a very long story short. I was scheduled to get on an airplane, and for some morass of reasons, I got on a different airplane, same day, same time. And I got on a second plane. The first plane crashed, and everybody but one little baby died. And so for a very long period of time, there was this thing going on in your brain that you figure, well, I'm supposed to do something that I haven't done yet. So I better find something bigger than just being alive, because, you know, somehow I survived a scenario that absolutely should have been on that first plane.
Right.
So you just, you don't get upset anymore.
No, it's those moments that really put life in perspective, and the commitment that you make to yourself and to others, because you've been afforded an opportunity that you know could have been taken away in a second.
Yep.
So
absolutely. So let's, I'm one of the reasons I'm really excited about having you here today is I am on the board at TTI, and I'm just excited about TTI because I'm going to let you tell the world what they do. But my observation as an outsider, now being on the board, is they have so much power to help us bring an organization together in a teaming, a common purpose direction, to really create, everybody talks about a people first culture. And I think they think about it like, I'm going to buy an app. There must be a people first culture app, and I'm going to buy it. And that's all of a sudden going to change my organization. So talk a little bit about your purpose and TTI and how that applies, particularly in this kind of post, I don't know if we're really post pandemic or not yet, but this transition that we're all going through.
Yeah, so TTI Success Insights exists for people who want to reveal human potential. And they do that specifically by helping individuals become more aware of themselves, of the others, and honestly, the organizations that they are a part of. And what they particularly bring to market is a set of deployable assessments that measure behavior and motivation and emotional intelligence and more. And it's a very compelling set of tools, because what TTI Success Insights essentially does is transform things that are sometimes subjective into something that is a bit more objective. And it enables business owners to use those resources and use that data to create a more holistic and ongoing capability to transfer value to their buyers by understanding their people within. I think that in the midst of a pandemic, there's a lot of, and I'm sorry, I know this is going to make you upset, and I don't mean to, Rick, at all, but a lot of people are invoking their Friends scene where Ross is standing on the stairs with that couch and he's screaming, pivot, pivot. And so there are so many different organizations that are pivoting, that are saying, I need to do something different. I need to transform making Band-Aids to now making ventilators. I don't know. That's probably wrong. But nonetheless, there are so many businesses that are out there that are saying, I need to pivot my business. I need to know what to do differently. And I think that it becomes so much more compelling when you understand the raw material that you have within your organization through your people, and that you align against your purpose.
Yes.
Right. So for TTI Success Insights, our purpose before the pandemic was to help people who want to reveal human potential. And our purpose after the pandemic is the same thing. Right. Yep. So the context might be different, the marketplace may be different, but I think that it becomes really important for businesses to know why they exist in the world. And it doesn't have to be high and mighty. It could be a lot simpler. I was listening to your other podcast with Matt Hensler, which I thought was brilliant. He was talking about, hey, you don't have to have this big world-changing experience. You can just simply hydrate people so they could have peak performance. And that really resonated with me too, because fundamentally your purpose and your core values don't shift over time. You just get different lenses to look at them through and be able to adapt your critical offers and the value that you transfer to your buyers accordingly.
Well, and we've talked about this before, but one of the things I really appreciate about TTI, aside from the science and aside from they've been good at this for 40 years and they add value, is when I look at their team, that their team is loyal and their team seems to be people that do embrace the same purpose. And they're passionate about transferring the TTI value out to your value added associates so that they can deliver it to their customer. And you don't always, you see people who have jobs and they're glad they get paid and they may even like some of the technology they play with. But my observation is the TTI staff really, really embraces the mission and is personally fulfilled when they get to deliver on it.
Absolutely. That's completely true of our team. I think a critical thing that TTI has done really well in the definition of that purpose statement of that mission is that it's not very lengthy. It's a rather short statement that everybody repeats the same way. I've seen a few different businesses that had, 20-word purpose statements, and I can't tell you one of those words in that purpose statement because there's just so much data to take in. At TTI, we started with reveal human potential. And those were the 3 words that we wanted our staff and our customers and our value-added associates. It's another word for resellers in our phrase, but there's so much more. They add so much value. So value-added associates, suppliers, we want them all to know that this is the reason why we exist. It's all about revealing human potential. 3 words, sticks, stays, and people evangelize it and live it.
Well, and I've had the opportunity to be at your last conference before the pandemic hit. Mm-hmm. And I saw hundreds of people who used those same 3 words. And not only did they use them in conversation, but you could see every day in their lives they were living those. They didn't all live them the exact same way, but that's okay. They had the same purpose, and their business model might be slightly different than the person sitting next to them, but the purpose didn't change. So
that's exactly right.
Yeah, and I loved your comparison to some of these 2-sentence long or compound complex sentences that go on forever, and you get so many words. And as you and I've talked about the different glasses you wear to look at a situation. And every one of those words is going to get slightly different sets of glasses depending on who the purpose is. So as soon as you got 10, 12 key words, all of a sudden you got 10, 12 different comparisons based on your glasses. And it's like one of those, we're going to sit here in a circle and I'm going to tell you a secret and you're going to pass it on and we're going to see if after it goes around the whole circle, is it the same secret? And of course it never is. No. And so that's, I love the simplicity of being really clear about those words. So tell me, when I look at the challenges people have, and of course this is about living a revenue culture, which is this combination of the business mission and that the fact, people somehow think the business mission of creating long-term profitability, scalability, sustainability, whatever words they use, they somehow disconnect the culture from that. It's like, well, if we have a good enough business strategy and we create enough key metrics and we create enough process, it'll just all work. And then we got to figure out why our people aren't having any fun. And it's like they're 2 different things. How does, in the world of TTI and I know you guys have a great research organization that not only looks at what you've done and how to improve it, but you also look at what's coming. What are some of the observations that TTI has about how do we get those 2 things to come together? That people first organization with, and if you don't create profit, the organization doesn't last very long. So those 2 things got to play together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that looking at people as assets is problematic for organizations on the whole. So if you're looking at your human assets or your people assets, it may be time to evolve that thinking process. People are not assets, they are humans. So being able to understand what drives those humans and understand how to get the best from those humans is important in businesses, because here's the fundamental thing. Everybody is a genius. As a leader, it is our job to find that genius, to promote that genius, to provide foundational support for that genius, and let that genius help to define the culture. Culture is fundamentally the foundation on which the business model, which I equivalent or I make the equivalent to a house, sits on. So your culture is foundational. If you have a crack in your foundation of your house, it's going to massively impact your house. So creating that strong foundation based on the people that are within it and the way that they display those behaviors, I think becomes critically important. So if you are, and you use the expression a mercenary type of a culture where you're seeing your people as assets and things, they're widgets to move product or to take a particular action, as opposed to seeing them as the unique genius that they bring to the table that can elevate the culture and thus elevate the business, I think is an opportunity for businesses all around the world.
There was a hidden gem in there that I absolutely love, and I hadn't heard it expressed that correctly, I think, before. When you talk about everybody is a genius, one of the challenges I see for a lot of leaders is they don't recognize that some of the people on the team today that, you're glad they're doing fine, but you don't describe them as a genius. What they really are is the genius for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
And that as they are passionate about what they're doing, they see what's going on today a little differently, and they're clear about tomorrow. For the people who are maybe, the known genius today, they're not the genius for tomorrow. And so it's that recognition that scale and sustainability come from this combination of humans who love the mission.
I can't tell you how many times I've read, and I read voraciously. I read business books voraciously. It was Sunday night of Labor Day yesterday. I was reading a business book before I fell asleep. Like I consume them like crazy. And there's so many lessons in the book of, hey, like promote the genius within your organization, or more importantly, empower your people to make decisions and to create small spaces so that they can fail and actually learn from that. It's phenomenal to me that so many business owners haven't taken that next step to be able to say, let's empower our people. Let's help them to go and do the amazing things that they can. And there's a virtuous cycle here too, that I think is important to highlight. When we promote the genius of the individuals in our organization, and that shores up the foundation or our culture in our business, those people within our business take really good care of our customers and transfer incredible value to our customers. And when our customers feel the value and they are cared for, they then continue to buy with you. And when they continue to buy with you, they in essence take care of the shareholders. And it creates this virtuous cycle that so many businesses that have realized it are maximizing their capabilities.
Well, and I absolutely, I think that was beautifully said. And I even go a step further. And I believe that and I know in TTI's case, this is true, you guys are a thought leader in your industry. And thought leaders should be tying together their employees with their ideal customers who also embrace the purpose, and the customers and even your business partners, true partners, become part of the culture. So the culture is no longer owners, leaders, employees. It should also go out to partners, buyers, ideal buyers, and the community. So that when we think about our culture going forward, that's when you really get the energy. And then everybody's willing to step up because we're all after the same purpose.
We are, and we're unified in that. I think it's really smart to identify the community and your partners. Some people would call these vendors, but your service providers in general, like those people that are aligned with your core mission or your purpose statement, as we've been calling it here, create this beautiful cycle of adding incredible value and creating sustainability for that business over the longer term. Like there's a fiscal implication here that is really important to identify as well. When you create this sustainable business and where people are aligned with the mission and what you're attempting to achieve, there are serious financial rewards that come with that for a business. So again, you can fund whatever that endeavor might look like and adding more value in the community to your partners, your vendors, your service providers, to whatever that might look like. So the fiscal reward here is phenomenal as well.
Yeah, and I could go on that subject for a week, but just suffice to say that too often we forget that the only time metric isn't this month or this quarter or this year. The time metric is really generations. It's our kids, it's our grandkids. And sometimes we think we make more money in the short term. We don't realize what it costs us in the long term. And then we're constantly trying to backfill, or that crack in the foundation, we're trying to continually fill it as the ice and the water, separated farther and farther and farther. So I want to go back to your story about the legacy. And one of the things when we talk to people about creating a revenue culture and we talk to people about deploying revenue science, they often come back and say, well, I'm not the CEO, or I haven't been anointed the chief revenue officer. So what can I do? I'd love to have you talk a little bit about, because your personal experience of flipping the thing upside down is a good example of what can people who are in the middle of an organization do to impact the culture, impact the ability to create, to optimize, to maximize the revenue and optimize the culture. Do you have to be a CEO to make a difference?
Yes, just joking. No, you don't. No, you don't have to be the CEO. You don't have to be the CRO. You don't even have to be a manager to make a difference. You could be on the front lines, right? And you could make a significant impact. I think what helps an organization, and you call this the revenue true north, right? The identifying the actions and the behaviors that drive value for your buyers and drive margins for the business. What are those particular actions? And if your organization doesn't necessarily have that, maybe start to create that and have that discussion and that dialogue with your boss to say, what are the particular behaviors that increase value and that increase margin, both for us and for our customers, our buyers. I think it's consequently just as important to know what are the behaviors that erode value and erode margins, so that you as a middle manager or someone on the front lines can make sure that you are hyper aligned with those things that deliver value. I'll give an example of this with TTI Success Insights in particular. So you mentioned earlier that we have an annual event each year. And this year we are optimistic that we're going to be able to get back into person, to be in person with other people. Might be a smaller group this year with people that are comfortable with doing that, depending on how everything shakes out here over the next few months. But one of the things that our customers, or actually our VAAs, not our customers, our VAAs were coming to us with is like, do you have a discount? Do you have, why is it as expensive as it is? This is a really significant investment. And the frontline team and I actually created our True North map for the business, and we applied it to this particular event. So we decided to not discuss discounts, but instead to get oriented on the value that we're attempting to drive in the community that we want to create. So we decided that discount and fees and that language was below this horizon line that actually erodes value, erodes margin. And instead, it was a discussion about value and the strengthening of the community that added value and added margins. So that's an example of someone that is on the front line that is essentially saying, how do I get aligned with this? And how do I make sure that I display the right behaviors, and then model that profoundly throughout the organization.
Oh, I love the story for a whole series of reasons, but as you were talking, I flashed on two situations in my career, because not every situation, sometimes they're going to give you the door rather than let you make the difference. But I was a head of a department in a college many years ago, and I clearly was the outlier in what was going on. But at the end of 3 years being there, they gave me control over my little bitty tiny place in this big space. I was the only department in the college making money, and my students grew from like 15 to like 100. And so I had that much control, so that I didn't have to be the president of the college or the dean or any of those things. I could do something in my little bitty space. Now, as a salesperson, I think I had more autonomy to do that than other people in other roles, because people would look at you and say, if you sell this much, you're good. If you don't sell that much, you're gone. And so I could create my own little world. I could focus on value. I could have different conversations. And the only risk was I was going to be gone if it didn't work. And of course, I was fortunate enough, it always worked, and often massively worked. But it was a way to be in the middle of and in some cases, I was in organizations that were over $10 billion. And so it wasn't like I was running anything other than my own job, but I could do it right. And that always felt good.
Right. Well, and I think that there is intrinsic value in that, in knowing that you are creating the change that you want to see, but also you might have had some peers that were looking at you and going, he's doing something right. He's growing this thing. I need to learn from that as well. So I think that there is an incredible amount of value in modeling the behavior that you want to see and being able to be an inspiration for the people around you. And it could be someone who is your superior as well, being able to say, okay, Rick, what are you doing right? Like, how do I teach others how to do it? How do I do it myself? So I think there's incredible value there.
I never thought about that, Candice, but a number of the people that I worked with in a couple of those situations ended up either working with me or for me later. So we must have created some kind of bond or common focus on purpose, because it ended up real well over the long term. But not that we had power in the short term, but that we did share purpose and that type of thing. So we stayed together for decades.
And I wonder if that's the key takeaway from this, right? So it's to not only model the behavior you want to see, but to create the community of actions that you want. So if you're in the middle of an organization, or if you're on the front lines, create your community of the right types of behaviors and the right type of action, so that you can have a profound impact of the organization from the bottom up, as opposed to from the top down.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because it hadn't dawned on me before, as you were talking about organizations when they treat people as assets. My first grown-up job was working for Pontiac Motors in the plant. And when you went into the plant, you quickly figured out that every employee was only there until the robot showed up.
Mm.
And so it was interesting, the relationships that were created where we were temporary replacements for the robot, almost none of those carried forward. But when we were in other places that at least had some degree of purpose, some degree of humans working with humans to transfer value and create a good outcome, oftentimes there were some really big, both short-term and lots of big long-term benefits out.
Absolutely. And I think that the purpose and the core values is a great place. So if you don't have that written true north, right? Starting with just the purpose statement or the mission of the organization and their core values is a really compelling way to be able to do that if you're in the middle or even on the front line, right? So using that as your true north until you have some of those articulations clear is important. It reminds me of somebody in the TTI Success Insights organization. Her name is Nicole, and she's been with us for almost a year. And she is she's in charge of our first impressions. She's our receptionist, and she's bright and bushy-tailed and ready to do whatever is required. And she's a really great learner. One of the things that we recognized in Nicole is that she loved to recognize other team members. So as an example, one of our team members was having a baby, and she arranged for this person to get a gift card about 30 minutes before the call with the team. Like, she was just brilliant in the way that she crafted this experience. So we asked her to actually step up and show how our core values come alive, to display some of those behaviors to the rest of the team when it comes to people first, being proud of your work, and a host of others. So she is now our core values come alive person. And on our Slack channels, she's celebrating people's anniversaries and playing games and doing all of these different things to be able to say that we've got each other's back, and she's making them come alive. So that's another example of someone that's actually doing it on the receptionist who takes the calls and says, where can I transfer you to? She does it in a much more eloquent way than that. But she is living those values and showing everyone how to do it and modeling the behavior so that others can do so too. Nicole is brilliant, and she has fully embraced this ask and is now making it come alive and letting it spread out to our distributors, our VAAs as well. So it entirely possible to do it. In the story that you just shared, and in Nicole's story as well, I think it's incredibly compelling and actually really, really easy, so long as you're aligned with the purpose and the core values of an organization.
Well, I love that story for a series of reasons, but one of them is you identified her genius. And,
We did.
that's, we have to give people the opportunity to let their genius out. And, one of my favorite quotes is a bad system beats a good person every time. And so often we have bad organizational systems that perpetuate what we think worked yesterday, and we really beat down what could be working tomorrow. And, that's a great story that's identifying her genius that wasn't part of that job a year ago, but it's now recognized, it not necessarily as the receptionist job, but it's an important job inside TTI that somebody needs to embrace. It makes a difference.
It does. It makes a tremendous difference. But you're right. I think it's important for us as leaders, and you don't have to have a title in order to be a leader. So let's be clear about that. But it's important for us as leaders to identify the spark when we see it. Going, there's something there. What just happened? Like, what about that makes you excited? What else can you do with that? Right. So whether you're frontline or the CEO, you have the capacity to be a leader and spot genius, and then nurture it so that it can continue to bloom.
Okay, this wasn't one of the things we were going to talk about today, but we're going to go there.
Okay, very good.
One of the things I said in your introduction you're really good at is looking across an organization, then down through it. And, so as you talk about leaders recognizing, what my brain translates that into, the leader recognizes, oh my gosh, the future says we need to do things different. Look at what this person's doing. Oh my gosh, that could make a difference in the future. And this person's capable of doing that. And how can I support them in, making that happen? And not all leaders see that. I mean, often we think of leaders as the best programmer or the best closing salesperson, or, from your experience and from TTI's technology and capability and 40 plus year history, how do we get leaders to recognize that our bubbles or our business cycles are getting shorter and shorter and shorter, so that part of leadership, whatever place you are in the organization, is recognizing the possibilities of the future?
I think it becomes really challenging when we think of it as this big, hairy thing. And instead, as leaders, when we're able to transform those things that are subjective into what is objective, which is really what TTI Success Insights specialty is, when we're able to transform those things and then we spot the genius spark, that one moment of like there's just something there. There's just a little bit of energy. You could feel it coming off of them. Not knowing how to apply it is perfectly okay. But applying it in some way is what's most important. When we saw Nicole light up and send this person a gift card that arrived at his door 30 minutes before a call that we were going on to, we didn't know how to translate that into whatever might be over here, but we eventually found our way. And at first she was making our core values come alive internally. And now it's actually evolved and she's creating a core value ambassador program where we're recognizing our value added associates that are evangelizing those same core values and that same purpose. And we're recognizing them and giving them awards so that they continue to create this virtuous cycle of living out the purpose and the core value. So let it go. I think as leaders, we don't have to control it. We just have to scooch it forward just a tiny bit. And once we scooch that forward and then let it bloom and continue to evolve, we don't have to control that. We just have to encourage that. We have to nurture that. And that's a leader, whether you're the best salesperson, whether you're the CEO, or you just believe in people.
Candice, that I've got a lot out today, but you just gave me a piece that while I think I was aware of it before, I don't think I would have talked about it. And that is, you just talked about the fact that the leader might not know what to do about it. And your inference was, that's okay. And I don't think we often let the leaders know it's okay to not know for sure what we're going to do next. And part of the reason you want a people first culture is so the culture can help you figure out what to do with that next.
That's exactly right. Yep.
I mean, to me, that's a huge level of awareness that leaders need to have, and their organizations need to empower or support or allow. And that is for the leader not to know, and for the culture to accept the responsibility to help them know.
That's right. And I mean, the culture, that strong foundation will help them to move forward in a really effective way. I love your insight here. You may not know what to do with it, and that's okay. Step one is recognizing it. Something lit you up about that. What was that? And uncovering that a little bit. And then scooching it forward is the expression I used, but even just saying, can we use it in this way? What do you think about that? And when I'm actually able to take Nicole's assessment results and see what drives her, I can align that just the baby step forward with her drivers to say, let's move this forward together. And then she runs with it, man. And that's amazing. And I love it.
Oh, that's very cool. And I think this also is that point where the maximizing profits by optimizing the people first culture comes together, because the traditional business book talks about scale, it talks about sustainability, it talks about succession, but it's that people first culture that allow those things to happen.
That's right. When you show up and you treat humans as humans with unique genius and a capability to do more, you allow for your business to flourish. So
I got two last questions for you before, and I'll create another one probably someplace, but
that's okay.
as we're, and I'm not sure we're out of the pandemic yet, but let's say we're at least transitioning into a different place in business than we were a year ago. What are the observations and recommendations that you have? Because we're balancing technology, because technology during the pandemic leaped, I don't know how many years, 3, 5, 10 years ahead of where it was before. And now we're more focused on the human as part of the culture. And, sustainability and scale are definitely different than they were 2 years ago. So, from the learnings of yours and TTI, what message do you have for the rest of us?
I think you summed it up really well. You said that the pandemic inside of 18 months accelerated us as a society forward 10 years easily. from the working from home culture to more employee flexibility to actually just coming back to the family.
Yeah.
Right. And people realize that, oh, I have these really cool people in my life. Oh, they're my kids and my spouse and my partner. And, I think that there is a tremendous shift that is happening in the way that we're treating ourselves as humans. And we're in the middle of an employee-driven marketplace where employees get to say, I need to be aligned with the purpose, or maybe they've saved up like crazy and they're saying, I can retire at 39 and that's fine. So I think that there is a way for us to identify how we can add value into people's lives holistically. Right. At TTI Success Insights, we've created what we call this wellness initiative. And we actually have a Slack channel that is the wellness channel, where people are actually being recognized for their capabilities to contribute to the overall well-being of an individual. I think that it becomes important for businesses to recognize that we need to not only contribute to the wellness and the flexibility of our employees, but we need to do so for our partners. We need to do so for our customers. We need to do so for our communities. Right? So how do we leverage technology and our understandings of foundational behaviors, as well as motivations, emotional intelligence, to allow for people to have these more human experiences with our businesses that drive value in their lives? I think that even when we look at the efficiencies associated with salespeople going out and going to client services or going to client locations, clients are saying we don't need that anymore, right? And we don't need to over invest in this space. We have a tremendous amount of efficiencies that are coming forward for businesses that will add value into the lives of the humans that we serve. So I think it becomes really important for businesses, because the pandemic is not yet over, at least on this day, September 6th, 2021. We're still in the thick of it. We're still figuring out what our next steps look like. It may continue to go on. And I think we need to understand what value means for our people. And people first does not necessarily mean employee first. People first means humans. Treat people as the humans that they are and where they are and how they're showing up and what their wants and their needs are. So I think that we need to recognize, as business leaders or people participating in businesses that are transferring that value, that the terms of the value has changed, and that the value that we need to transfer, like, people are very, very clear in articulating what their needs are at this moment in time, because we just went through a significant emotional event as a society and humankind. So just understanding that it is no longer an option for us to simply say, I build this product and you're going to buy this product and that's how it's going to work going forward, is no longer the way. Now the way is, how do we add value and richness and depth to people's lives?
Wow. Great. I can't add anything to that. That's absolutely spectacular. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Well, any last words you'd like to leave with us today? I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I've loved working with you. I think you're going to have a phenomenal career. So any last words you want to pass on, just in general, that you think will help people in the middle or people at the top?
Yeah, I think when I think about last words, and I think about just three other big trends as I kind of get off my soapbox from the people first approach. And the three big things that I would love for people to take away is that, like, the concept of an independent entrepreneur is becoming more and more prevalent in the next generation of employees and people overall, whether that is, I want to create a lifestyle business so that I could support my family and have lots of flexibility, or I'm going to become an influencer on TikTok and make millions, because that is a possibility, right? For these new people that are incredibly talented coming up. The critical pivot point for businesses is to recognize that an entrepreneurial spirit is incredibly cherished and valued by people. So businesses need to find a way to potentially even formalize a program around intrapreneurs, meaning supporting the entrepreneurial spirit within their organization. So that's another key takeaway that I think is profound as it applies to revenue science as well. How can you identify and spot this unique genius, allow people to show up with their needs and their values and align with that so that your business can continue to grow and scale profitably while also delivering the impact? So I think that's the future. I think that's where we're going to be going. We're going to see a lot of, we might even see titles that say, I don't know, sales entrepreneur. I don't know, that might be wrong, but that entrepreneurial spirit is something that businesses are going to need to figure out how to harness in order to move forward.
Oh, I can't tell you how much that one means to me. And if you get the chance, go look at our very first podcast, because the guest was Susan Foley. And Susan's a long-term friend of mine. She was a client 30 years ago. And she is one of the world experts on entrepreneurship. And she's written, I think, 3 books. And if you ever want to meet her, I would be thrilled to connect you to.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and because she is so passionate and has done such good work and such good research that you're right. It's a critical area, and it's one of those that culturally has been a challenge because organizations don't know how to fit it into their vision of themselves.
Right.
And so very, very fitting for today. So I want to thank you so much. This has been fun. And
yes, it has.
very educational for me. So I love that when I get to learn cool new stuff. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me. This has been a blast, and it's always a great time. I love spending time with you, Rick. It's fantastic. Thank you.
And I thank everybody for joining us, and look forward to the next time.